I'll give you back your power. That's what Crack the Female Code is all about. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mike Kollin at crackedfemalecode.com. There's an actual DNA code that when you understand this pattern and a few others, it triggers her mating system and it turns her on and it makes her want to have sex with you. Now, if you want to find out how to do this, you have to take either my one-on-one coaching course, Crack the Female Code. It is a 6-day training. It used to be 5 days, but I've extended it an extra day without any extra charge, okay? I have some openings coming up at the very end of August, the last week of August, and going into September. And in September, after the 7th or around the 7th, I have to actually check the location and time and stuff. But I'm going to set up a training so multiple men can fly in or come in from California or wherever you are, even around the world, so you can take the training at a much greater discounted price. So time slots and availability are beginning to open up, so get them while you can. First off, buy my book, Crack the Female Code. It is imperative you have to read that book before you take the course. Okay, so early on, I'm talking around 1996 or so, something like that. So I was approximately 25 years old, something like that. I don't remember the exact date. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see if I wrote it down in this book. Hold on. No, I did not. Okay, so a book that I read, it was, I don't remember if we read it in psychology class, but I definitely remember, man, I think it was Tony Robbins that said to read it. It might have been an NLP trainer, but someone had told me to read a book called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. I think it was applied psychology. I think it was a professor in that class. Well, either way, this book is called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty by Manuel J. Smith, PhD. Now, how do I say this? Not one of the key that opened the door for me was in this book. But this book really isn't about, how do I say this? It's not about picking up on women at all. In fact, it has nothing to do with it. But I saw something because of my background in psychology, what I was studying in Ericksonian hypnosis. It was a concept that the way he explained it, my brain popped and went, oh, wait a minute. That's what women are attracted to. Not only attracted, but it triggers her mating system. Now, that it's not in this book, but I'm gonna get to how I put the pieces together. So essentially, the book is about, it's a doctor who would take students from the United States, from the West at least, but I think it was the United States, and he would bring them to different countries to do like Peace Corps work, where they would go to poverty areas where they would dig them wells and build them like shacks and homes and huts, and so they'd take a bunch of kids, they'd go out there, I don't know if it was for a year or 6 months, but they'd go out there and do this. And he noticed that when the kids first got there, they were really, really excited to do this. They really wanted to help.
This is Sausalito. I literally just came down the hill.
So he noticed there was a pattern that kept evolving, or kept happening, repeating itself. And what it was the students would come out in blazing guns and excited, and they'd work hard and they'd help people and they'd do all this stuff, had lots of energy. And then he noticed after a period of time, I don't remember if it was 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, but then they would start to get depressed and slow down, and some of them would go into kind of like an anxiety state where they would almost not even go out and work anymore. They would shut down. Now I'm not gonna put the whole book in here, but I'm giving you the gist. And he was trying to figure out, well, what is it? Now the reason why I'm saying it to you is because this is the number one problem men have, especially in the West, when it comes to meeting women, approaching women, picking up on women, holding their own power in a relationship and keeping a girl. Okay, I'm going to be really blunt. If you're a male in the Western world, your power was stripped from you, taken away from you at a very, very young age. You have been manipulated at a very young age to do as you're told and keep your mouth shut. If you flat out don't feel comfortable, just walking up to the woman you're attracted to and having a conversation, something's wrong. And what it is you don't feel naturally assertive. So it says at the very top, #1 bestseller on assertiveness training. All right, I'm going to give you a real life story. Now, this is kind of extreme. I do believe it because my sister's a narcissist. My mother's a narcissist too. But it's prevalent in our society. It's so prevalent that if you were to see it right now, you would just think it was normal behavior. And here's what it is. Now, again, this was around the 90s. I want to say, again, I think it was 96 when I first saw this. So what happened was I went over to my sister's apartment, and she actually called me up and wanted me to, I don't know, help her or do something. I forget why I went over there. And I walked in, and my little nephew, who's about 5 years old, maybe 6, I think he was 5. Yeah, he was 5. He was kneeling in front of the television in the living room, completely silent, and he wouldn't move a muscle. And after about 10, 15 minutes, I kept looking over, and I would say, hey, to my sister, hey, what's wrong with him? Is he okay? And she's like, oh, yeah, he's fine. And I'm like, he doesn't seem fine. That's not normal for a little kid to like you got to understand, it was like he was in this almost Buddhist, not kind of like it wasn't like, the way a Buddhist monk would sit on his butt with his legs crossed, but it was like he was kneeling and he didn't move. And for a little kid that early in the day, I'm thinking, well, shouldn't he be bouncing off the walls and running around outside or something? And like he was just completely, he didn't budge. In fact, when I said hi to him, he barely moved. He didn't move his body, he just moved his eyes. Hello, Uncle Michael, like really, really quiet. So after a few more minutes, I got up and walked over there, and I'm like, "Are you okay, Nicholas?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I went back to my sister. I go, "Is he on detention or something? Is he in trouble?" She's like, "No." I go, "Did you make him kneel like that and not move? Like, is he under threat right now?" She's like, "No, not at all." So my little niece, Ashley, she was running around. She was about, I think she was like 8 years old. She was bigger. She was a big girl too for her age, or just big period even now. And she was running around, blah, 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 blah. I mean, just yelling and screaming, knocking stuff over, running around in circles, blah, 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 just being obnoxious as you could freaking imagine. So I'm like, what's the deal? My sister goes, what's the big deal? She's a little kid. Just let her, like run around. She's got a lot of energy. I'm like, oh, okay. So then what happened was he got hungry, and I don't remember if this happened first or the other way around. So, okay, so he gets up and he walks into the kitchen and he goes, "Mommy," like really quiet like that. She goes, "God damn it, Nicholas, I told you to sit down and be quiet." And I looked at her like, what the fuck? So he went back over there, knelt down in front of the television on his knees again, and perfectly stayed still. I was like, oh my God. And so then what happened was she called my niece in there, and she goes, here's what I want you to. They were selling cookies, brownie, what do they call it? Girl Scout cookies. And she goes to my niece, you know that voice I taught you? Use that voice, and when you call Auntie Vicky, say, "Auntie Vicky, will you buy 20 boxes of cookies?" And I was like, oh my God, 20 boxes? Like, holy shit. And she goes, she probably is only going to say, no, I can't buy that many, but she might, do half and then just go, please. And I'm like, and I looked at my sister. Oh yeah, and that's when my nephew walked up, and that's when he walked over really quietly. He goes, "Mommy," and he was going to ask her for some food, and she goes, "God damn it, Nick, let's go back up there and sit down." And I looked at her and go, oh my God, I see what the fuck's going on here. You're telling him to stay quiet and do as he's told. And she literally said, "Do as you're told." That's what she said. And you're teaching her how to manipulate people. My eyes were opened. I started seeing this everywhere. Boys are told, basically punished to do as you're told, stay quiet, do as you're told, be a good boy, follow the rules. Whereas girls are told to take charge, to manipulate. They're not only told that, but they're taught it for years. Now, Dr. Bob Bays, he did Tony Robbins' Skills of Power weekend. It was a 2.5-day training in San Francisco. He did another one in San Jose. I'm sure he did a lot of it, but those are the two that I attended. And he was teaching NLP skills, and a lot of the people there were psychologists, and they were just like, holy shit. And I forget what he was teaching. It was something about women, or I think he was talking about the right brain. And the whole crowd was kind of stunned and really got quiet. And he said, I'm going to tell you something before we go to break. He goes, I believe that every woman that raises a child to the age of 5 years old deserves to be awarded a master's degree in psychology. And someone said, why? And he said, because at that stage, a woman has mastered the art of influence, meaning manipulation.
Lots of really good restaurants here.
I am telling you guys, boys have been getting manipulated going all the way back probably about to the 50s. Before that, men still had a lot of power, and boys used to leave the home at about the age of 5 and were raised by their fathers, and the fathers would teach them to be assertive, to stand up for themselves, and what to say to a woman, how to deal with them. We don't have that anymore. We have women telling us what to do. Now, I've been teaching this stuff since the 90s. About 96 through 98 when I first started teaching this stuff. Back then, my clients would call me a male chauvinist pig, and there was a book. Actually, it's a manual. Hold on, let me get it. Stand corrected. I started teaching this piece. Now, I was teaching dating relationship coaching in the mid 90s, but as I evolved, I came across a book, and this is 2006. So forgive me for the year. I had it wrong. It's called It's a book that you download back then. So you would buy it online, then you'd have to download it. Luckily, I had a printer, so I could. And it says, The Great Female Con, the book every female does not want her man to read, by Andy Randeed. Andeyrandead. Andy Randeed. And again, Randead. Now, when I read the first couple chapters of this, I was pretty steamed. I was upset. I was mad. This guy's just a female chauvinist pig, a male chauvinist pig, and I was just like, fuck this guy. And so it was kind of hard to deal with because, as a kid that was raised in the 70s, I was raised in California, you got to do as you're told. So, essentially, towards the end, I think it was the last section or the last chapter, whatever he called it, because I don't know if he breaks it up into chapters. I'm not going to open it up, but it's been a long time since I've looked at that book. So at the very end, he said something that made a lot of sense. He goes, now he was a very successful businessman, very successful, retired, and he goes, I just had to write this book to help men. And he was talking about how men were getting raped in the court. Like if you were the sole money maker and you made all the money, even if you made it 15, 20 years before you ever met her, she could marry you. And then 5, 10 years later, get a divorce and literally take up to half or more of your money that she never even earned. Now, the brainwashed idiot that I was like, well, yeah, she washed your car, cooked your clothes. Sorry, not cooked your clothes. She cooked your food, washed your clothes, etc. And he makes a really good, solid point, and he goes, even women where the husband hires a maid, hires a maintenance guy, hires someone to clean the house, mow the lawn, clean the pool, a woman who literally does nothing can still sue you and take all this money, and she's done nothing other than spread her legs. Forgive me for being so blunt. At this point in time, after I went through my awakening at the age of 20 years old, that was 1996, if I remember right. Let me think for a second. Yeah, that was 1996, after my 28th birthday. I was really aware of what was going on, and I was like, dude, men are getting freaking bamboozled. Like, we were bamboozled. Holy shit. Men would even get divorced from a woman who was cheating on them, and I watched some of my friends go through, oh, Mike, she deserves half, and I'm like, what are you talking about? She's the one who screwed you over. And I'm just like, she's never worked a day in her life. Like, this doesn't make sense. And I'm like, but men back then were just so brainwashed. We were like, oh, Michael, that's only fair. I'm like, how in the fuck is this fair? A lot of women will marry you simply because, they want financial security. And after the rule in California, I don't think in Florida it's this way, but in California, if you're married for 10 years, if she divorces you, automatically she gets half of everything. And you have to pay her alimony for the rest of her life. It's a wonderful payment program for her. So as I was watching my friends go through this, getting divorced, like my best friend, his girlfriend was cheating on him with 2 different guys. And he was paying for 2 of her credit cards. One of the credit cards was paying this guy's rent for his apartment. The other one was paying off the other guy's car payments. So don't think that I'm like, oh, women are just these innocent little creatures. I don't believe that at all. There's a female lawyer that I used to quote. I don't remember her name, and I don't know where I'm sure I have her book still. But she used to be a lawyer for women when they got divorced, and she would basically rape the men and take all the money. But she started realizing how unfair the laws were. So, God, I wish I could remember her name. Damn. Long story short, she used to be on the National Organization for Women. She was the head lawyer, the head CEO of this huge worldwide organization, the largest organizations for women's support. And she started realizing how unfair the laws were to good men. Simply, she didn't want to get a divorce. She just took whatever she wanted. So then she completely flipped, and then she became solely a lawyer for men to defend them and protect them in law. Not only that, but she did like a kind of like the National Organization for Women. She went on this thing where she was speaking up for men's rights and how men were getting raped in court and how unfair it was and how the laws were one-sided and on and on and on. Now, one of the benefits is now that some women are making more money than men, now women are beginning to divorce women and taking their money. And oh shit, women are getting pissed about that. Isn't that kind of funny now that the shoe's on the other foot? Now they're flipping out. That law will be changed when I would say about 20 to 25% or more of women are losing their ass in court because of divorce. In other words, the man's taking her money. When enough women are getting hurt, they're going to organize and say, we need to get rid of this law because now it's not benefiting us. So in this guy's book, The Great Female Con by Andy Randide, he said, what business, and he breaks it down, he says, do you know that your marriage license is literally a business tax license? It's literally for taxes. He goes, you name one business where one business is worth $50 million. Now, I don't have the exact numbers he uses, but you get the gist of it. Where let's say one business is worth $50 million and the other one's worth $300,000. And the minute they join together as one business, that the other side gets half of the, gets $25 million. He goes, that's not the way it works in business. So why should it be that way in divorce? So now, I keep harping on opening up to the right brain. Why? Because the right brain can see the manipulation. You can hear it in their voice. You can see the intention behind their words, which, by the way, is something I teach in the course. You literally have to see behind it. When you're open to your right brain, you can read people better. That's why, what was that guy's name? I think it was, was it Ross Jeffries or Mystery? No, I think it's Ross Jeffries. He said, women have a lie radar and you cannot bullshit them. That's the right brain. Once I opened up to my right brain, I could just watch people lie to me. I'm like, oh my God, it's like so obvious. See, when you're in your right brain, you start to hear it, you can see it, you can feel it. Now here's the other thing. Okay, so now let's go back to the book When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. On page 13, something opened my eyes, and I'm going to read it off to you. Alright, second paragraph. While our neurophysiological coping mechanisms of anger, aggression, fear, flight, and depression withdrawal are not in themselves signs of sickness and maladaptive coping, they just aren't of much use to us. They seldom work. They rarely even help. Most of our conflicts and problems come from other people, and in dealing with other people, our primitive responses are insignificant in comparison with our uniquely human coping ability, which means the right brain, of verbal, assertive problem solving. Anger, fight, and fear, flight, however, actually interfere with this verbal coping ability. When you become angry or afraid, your primitive lower brain centers shut down. Much of the operation of your new human brain, let me read that again. When you become angry or afraid, your primitive lower brain centers shut down much of the operation of the new human brain. The blood supply is automatically rerouted away from your brain and gut to your skeletal muscles to prepare them for physical action, for fight or flight. And thus, your human problem-solving brain is inhibited or limited from processing information. When you get angry or afraid, you just don't think clearly or efficiently. You make mistakes. To an angry or frightened man, 2 plus 2 no longer add up to 4. Now, you know how I keep talking about that artery in the lower reptilian brain? That's what he's talking about. The reptilian's brain has two priorities. Number 1, to keep you alive, okay? Number 2, to reproduce children. That's why our mating system for both men and women is in the lower reptilian brain. It is instinctual. There's no thinking. There's no processing. It is just animalistic. It's kill or be killed, fight or flight. In other words, it's literally called the fight or flight brain. So when you're in a state of fear, that lower brain has precedence over that artery, and it controls it. So what it does is, if you're in a state of fear, guilt, shame, feeling really sad, depressed, it narrows the artery and thus reroutes the blood back into your muscles. Now, people that are operating off this system, they seem to have rage issues. They get angry. And then what they do is they shut down. It's because you're not using your human brain. There's no processing. There's no thinking. And the problem with that is, when that artery is narrow, you don't function very well, especially in the modern society. Now, what do you mean modern society? I don't mean 2025. I mean, we can go all the way back to like 1000 or 0 AD. I mean, like, I'm talking about when we came out of the caves. So what he noticed was, with these kids, these were very intelligent kids. They all had scholarships to go away to four-year colleges and universities, etc. But they were taking 1 year to join the Peace Corps. That's what the Peace Corps is. You join it a year usually before you go to college. So I noticed in the very beginning they were all excited and stuff, worked hard and were just very helpful. But here's what happened is, the villagers would come to them and say, hey, I need more nails. And the kids were told, like, hey, don't be giving out all our supplies, because if we don't have any supplies, we won't be able to build the things we got to build. We won't be able to dig the wells and build the troughs and all that stuff. So what happened is the villagers, oh, please, please, please. And the kids didn't have any verbal way to say no. And when they said no, they felt guilty. Thus, the book states, when I say no, I feel guilty. Now, he talks about how we are manipulated at a young age, and let me just find it. All right, there's some other good stuff I'm going to read, but first, so here's essentially what he said. I'm not going to read off. He said, your mother was much better at manipulating you when you were a kid than you were her. So she basically manipulated you and shut you down, and you got shut down at a very young age, okay? So now here's what he says on page 15. He says, you could walk and talk. This is technically 14 at the bottom. You could walk and talk and understand what your parents told you. At this point, it was no longer appropriate to physically restrict your behavior if you were ever to progress beyond the infant stage. The control your parents exerted over you changed from physical to psychological, meaning instead of just picking you up and putting you back in the crib, or hey, don't walk away, you got to where you could just walk around wherever you wanted. And he says it went from physical to psychological, meaning the control that parents had over you. So they started to do it mentally. So as soon as you could learn to speak, the word that rolled from your tongue most assertively was an emphatic no. Now think caveman. I'll get that to it in a second. So you would even give up your favorite treat sometimes to be able to say the word no. I mean, I remember I saw a child do it, and the mom said, "Do you want some ice cream?" No, no, no. It really was really proud, because the word no was probably the second word after mommy or daddy. And it became an assertiveness of I'm me and you're you. Now, the reason why children love this word, they call it the terrible twos. They use it even when they usually want something like ice cream or candy. They'll reject it. Now, here's why. When a child is first born, and up until I think it's around the age of 13 months to 18 months, something like that, okay? I can't remember the exact date. But what happens is they think that everyone in the room is just an extension of them. They think we are all one. So when it sees the mom's arm move up and down, it thinks that that's its arm. When dad is in the room, it thinks that, well, that's my leg and that's my body. It doesn't see, it doesn't understand. It's not just an understanding, it's visual eyes cannot really see things that well. For example, okay, so when a child is first born, it has to nurse on the mother's nipples, okay? So its range is something between 8 inches and 12 inches. That's how, in that range, it could see really clearly. And the purpose of it is to bond with the mother emotionally, to make that bond while it's nursing, okay? So when other people in the room, or when mom moves her right arm, which is about 2 feet away or 3 feet away or whatever, it just is like, it's not like, that's somebody else's arm. It doesn't think that. It's like, oh, that's me. That's my arm. Dad walks in the room, dog walks in the room, oh, this is me. So as the child develops and gets older, and its eyes develop and its brain develops, it starts to go, wait a minute. You're not me. That's not my arm. I'm not you. But at the age of, say, I don't know, 13 months or whatever, it essentially can only say mama, dada, okay? But then it starts to learn a word called no, and it's different for every child, okay? And what happens is by the time a child is 2, it's usually before this, about 18 months or maybe even a little earlier, they learn the word no. So they call it the terrible twos because they go, no, no, everything is no. They don't want to change their diapers. They don't want to eat food. They don't want to eat dinner. So now the mother's got to figure out a way. And this is what we were talking about. I think this is what Dr. Bob Babes was talking about in that seminar. And he goes, the mother has to learn ways to counterbalance this. Like it's called, what do they call it? Reverse psychology. You got to figure out different ways to trick the kid to eat food. And, we're in a hurry. We got to go. We got to change your diapers. We got to change your clothes. We got to get you to wash off. And the kid's like, no, no. Now, it's not necessarily doing it to be a little bastard. It's doing it because this word is an expression of I'm me and you are you. This is a celebratory expression. And it's funny, you watch a kid. I remember the first time I saw a kid do this. He was saying no to ice cream. And I'm like, doesn't that kid love ice cream? The mom's like, yeah, he's just going through this phase where he says no to everything. But the way he did it was no. Like he was just powerful and strong. But it wasn't even that. It was excited. This is healthy assertiveness. So Dr. Manuel J. Smith says, okay, let me go. Let's see, where is it? He goes, while this obstinacy may have driven mom up the wall, it was only an extension of your innate assertiveness into the verbal sphere. To psychologically control your behavior, so to psychologically control your behavior while you were learning and exploring this fascinating verbal ability, as soon as you could understand what your parents told you, you were trained to feel anxious, ignorant, and guilty, essentially when you said no or try to resist your parents to assert your independence. Now listen to these words, anxious, ignorant, and guilty. These negative emotions shut down that artery, and now you're not operating off of the larger human brain, and you lose your human coping abilities to cope with other people to get what you want. So it says these feelings are simply conditioned or learned variations of our basic survival emotions of fear. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. Okay, no, I will read this next sentence. So it says, once we have learned to feel anxious, ignorant, or guilty, we will do a lot of things to avoid feeling these ways. Our parents trained us to feel these negative emotions for 2 important reasons. First, playing upon our negative emotions is a very efficient way of controlling our natural, annoying, and sometimes explosive childhood assertiveness. Okay, so I'm not going to read any more because the point I'm trying to make is this. Your natural assertiveness was attacked at a feeble age of around 2 years old or less, and throughout your childhood you were constantly beat down, even into your teens. And these parents, especially mothers, had much greater verbal manipulation, influence abilities than a little infant child at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. So what happens is you are not a normal, healthy human being. Your assertiveness has been crushed. And again, by guilt, by shame, and all these negative emotions that narrow the artery and shut off the blood flow to the larger human brain. Thus, you are shut down to the caveman brain of being stuck in your reptilian brain, which is the brain essentially the caveman used, okay? So here's the deal. The difference between you and the caveman was not controlled the way we were controlled. The caveman basically went off and did whatever the fuck they did when they were 4, 5, 6 years old, and no one said no to them. Especially when they got even a little bit older, like no one said shit. They just walk away and go get their own food, get their own fish at the age of 7, 8 years old. They essentially didn't really need their parents, maybe a little bit, but not much. So here's the deal. Cavemen would say no. I mean, here, let me start this again. So imagine being an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, or 15-year-old caveman. Look at him. He's going to do whatever the fuck he wants. If a woman's irritating him, he says no. If she asks him for something and he's not in the mood, he's like, no. He don't give a fuck. There's no guilt. There's no shame associated to saying no. And that's the thing. It's okay. Haven't you ever seen guys where they say no to their parents or no to their girlfriends, and you're like, dude, why are you being such a dick? And he's looking at you like, yeah, you don't have a fucking girlfriend. There's a guy that was kind of a dick to his wife, and he just didn't give a fuck. He was like, no. Now, he was a good man. He was good to her, kept a roof over her head and this and that. But whenever she wanted something he didn't want to pay for, he's like, no. He goes, I'm not going to do it. And she would every day, because me and my buddy used to work for him. So immediately after high school, we would go over there and talk to him, because he lived right on the block where the high school was at. And I remember his wife would be like, oh, tell you love me, just say it, or, I want this. He'd be like, no. And whatever it was, he'd say no. And I remember like the 5th day, she just like, oh, you don't love me. And she broke down crying and went back in the room. I'm like, Jim, why don't you just go back there and give her a hug and tell her you love her? I mean, come on, dude. He goes, Mike, you don't understand women. Now, here's the funny thing. He had been married at this point for, I think, 7 years, owned a home, had his shit together, and the rest of us were just stumbling and bumbling bumblefucks and couldn't keep a girl. All our girlfriends were cheating on us, and Tara was loyal and faithful. And I remember she came out like half an hour later, honey, do you want me to cook you dinner? And she was so happy, and I'm like, what the fuck? And he looks at me and goes, see, told you. So essentially, the way we used to be before we were brainwashed in modern society is we would just say no when we wanted to. We didn't get beat up by our parents. We didn't get whipped or spanked by our teachers. We didn't get publicly humiliated or yelled at in front of other students in class. And our whole lives, that's what's happened to us. Our assertiveness was smashed. Number one, I highly recommend you read this book. I've read this book 3 times. The more I read it, the more I got it. One of the techniques that he teaches, and I'll teach it to you right now, it's called the agreement frame. Now, I learned this in NLP first, and then I read this book. I'm like, no shit, you just agree with them. If someone goes, so apparently he would say, like, sometimes some of my students, they would say, oh, your pants look like they're kind of like effeminate or kind of gay. And he'd turn around and look at him and goes, you know what? They do look kind of gay, don't they? They are a little bit effeminate. Yeah. In other words, he would just agree with them. And when you do the agreement frame, it takes the thunder out of their lightning. In other words, there's a lightning, but there's no boom. So when you take that away, they're like, oh, okay, well, those pants, those are gay pants. And he goes, yeah, I agree with you. They are pretty gay, aren't they? And then what you're doing, you're taking away their power. You're taking away their energy from hurting you. And if they keep doing it, everyone in the classroom looks at them like, dude, he's making you look like an idiot. And what happens is they will willingly shut up on their own. If someone goes, man, you're a freaking dick, say, yeah, I am a dick, aren't I? And they'd be like, oh, shit, doesn't bother him. Oh, no, man, you seriously are, man. You're like, no, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I'm a complete asshole. And I'll even go as far if they bring it up again, say, you know what I recommend? You shouldn't hang out with people that are dicks. And they'll be like, fuck, damn, this guy ain't fucking budging. Like, no. So the agreement frame is how you can say no. And this is one of the techniques he's taught his kids. When the villagers are like, oh, you're being mean. They're like, yeah, I am being mean. I'm not allowed to give this to you. I'm not supposed to do that. And so they started to become more assertive. And so now here's what happened. So instead of going into depression or weakness or feeling weak, they kept their power. So the villagers would play all kinds of games and like, oh, I really need hope. And he goes, they would cry. They would do this. They would do that. Yep. So he taught them things such as the agreement frame and just agree with them. Say, you're right. I know you need this and you are desperate and I'm still not allowed to do this. So what it did was it was a very healthy way to say no to people, and it was an assertive way to do it. And on top of it, well, it made you feel good and you walked away feeling unscathed. Now, there's some NLP things we can do. Actually, timeline therapy. Now, I work with people on assertiveness training. I've been doing this for 30 years. So there's a lot of therapeutic NLP, Ericksonian hypnosis, and or timeline therapy. Timeline therapy is going to be the main one, but there's some like parts integration, some other things we'll do using NLP. So if you come across this, it's not going to be a problem. I've been doing this work with people since my easily, I would say, 23 years old when I finally got certified as an NLP trainer. So number one, I would highly recommend reading this book. It's a really good book, and it gives you some techniques on, how to say no so you can keep your power and keep. Okay, I know what I was going to say. So again, the goal, what he noticed was when people did this kind of stuff, like the agreement frame, etc., that artery, instead of shutting down, it stayed open, and now they stayed in their full human capabilities. And this is what the female mating system is looking for. We do not live in the caveman era anymore, in the sense that we have to fight for everything, that everything becomes a fist fight, okay? So the female, even back then, the cavemen that functioned and thrived were the ones who were in the right brain. Now the right brain is the social brain. The social brain works together with other men. It creates bonds so you can provide and protect each other and each other's families. So if you're the single caveman walking around and you don't have any connections with other cavemen, you're kind of screwed. Because if a bigger caveman wanted to take something, he just took it. But if you're in a tribe and you have connections with the older guys okay, this is why women are attracted to older men. I'm telling you right now, if you don't know this, you're really missing the boat. Mother Nature wired women this way on purpose. If a teenage girl wanted to get pregnant, a cave girl, she would go after the older caveman, because the older caveman had more bonds with other cavemen, and thus she and her child would be more provided and more protected for, and the older caveman could function on a higher level than the lower cavemen. So if you're an older guy and you don't think you can date younger, well, here's the deal. If you're stuck in your left brain, you won't be able to date, because she'll look at you right away and she'll see it. Like, yeah, he's not open. As men get older, the testosterone begins to drop, and that opens you up to your right brain, and that is what attracts women. And that's what page 13 did for me on When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. When I saw that, I was like, holy shit, this is exactly... There's something I learned in human sexuality in college too. And when I read this book and put these two pieces together, I was like, oh shit, that's why women attracted me when I'm relaxed. Because when you're in a state of fear, the artery gets narrow because it's scared, it tightens up. But when you're relaxed, the artery opens up and the blood flows up into the larger human brain. Your pupils dilate wide open and your skin softens, your muscles are relaxed, and she can see that, she can feel that, she can hear it in your voice. Because instead of being Mr. Logical, uptight like this and talking very seriously, a lot of guys, they think they're talking with a resonant voice, and it's a tight voice, but to them, well, I sound like a man. No, you don't. You sound like you're tightening up your freaking throat. So being uptight pushes her away, being loose and relaxed attracts her. I'm not quite saying that right. It literally triggers her mating system. See, when your arteries open, eventually her artery begins to open, and thus she opens up to her right brain. The blood flows up into the larger human brain in her. So if she's around you, you're in a relaxed, open state, her body will eventually gain rapport with your body and your emotions, and then that artery will loosen up, relax, and then it will open her up to her right brain, which means she just turned on her mating system. And now she's horny, she's sensual, she's sexual, she's ready to mate. So now you know where I got this understanding of what the hell's going on. It's that lower artery. This is what I conditioned. Here's the thing. All right. So right now your logical brain, and I already know this, your logical brain is, I just heard this from Mike, I'm going to read the book, yep, I got it. No, you're still stuck in your logic. When you come in and take the course, I will condition your brain to more and more open up the artery, more and more and more. I'm going to walk you through a series of techniques. I'm going to guide you with my energy and my awareness. Your body's going to go in rapport with mine. The more we open you up to that, the easier it is for you to do it on your own. This is a challenge for men. If you think, well, I logically understand the artery now, it doesn't mean you're physically doing it. I could logically tell you how to play a football game in the NFL, but does that really mean you're going to walk on the fucking field and win a Super Bowl? No, dude. It's just going to take practice. It's going to take conditioning. All right, that's it. Remember, I've got some seminars coming up in the month of September. The first week, second week, and third week. I've got one-on-one coaching opening up at the end of this month, August, in the first week of September. And we'll have it somewhere in the month of September as well. So get a hold of me at 415-747-8598. That is a landline, so do not text it. All right, that's it, guys. Click subscribe, click the like button, go ahead and make a comment. And remember, if you want to support this channel, buy my book, Crack the Female Code, right now, and or buy the Ultimate Package. Go to crackthefemalecode.com. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.